how can you know what your journey is?
Of taking the time to kind of reflect on life. What am I good at? What do I enjoy? What are my values? How do I like to show up in life? How do I like to show up in my relationships?
If you're sleeping well and you're happy, chances are whatever's going on around you is pretty good,
Yeah,
right? But
yeah,
if you're like, man, I can't sleep, well,
yeah.
something's probably up.
Looking at the past, I always say, you can look to the past for lessons and for celebrations. Anything else is garbage.
What a great immigrant story, an entrepreneurial story. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Wednesdays Off podcast. Today, my guest is Rachid Zahidi. He is the host of Resilience Across Borders podcast. He is the CEO of Sentinel Data Retrieval and the author of published works, including most recently, the Emo Gym Journal. It's available at Amazon. You can visit his blog at atresilience.com. That's atresilience.com for more resources and information. Rachid, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Stavros. Thank you for having me, and congratulations on this very promising podcast.
Thank you, man. Thank you. I know that we are on similar journeys in terms of who we're trying to help and how we're trying to help them. I feel like we're kindred spirits sometimes.
Yeah,
and,
totally agree. Totally agree. This work is much needed.
Tell us a little bit about, in your own words, what is the work that you do and why is it so meaningful to you?
Yeah, well, if I were to kind of try to bring it together and sum it up, it's like having a positive impact, being a catalyst for positive impact. So any of the businesses that I've kind of been involved in, it was like first, like obviously to have a positive impact on me and my family and to allow me to, kind of achieve my goals and my objectives for myself and for my family, to have a positive impact and be a good guide and coach to my kids and then to my team, and then of course to continue to get better myself, better every day, because I mean obviously like a lot of the good work needs to be done repeatedly. It's not what you do once, it's what you repeat. That's where the magic is, and that's where the results come. So I try to remind myself of that, and I try to remind other people of that through the works that I do, whether it's the podcast, whether it's the journal, whether it's my team meetings, and even CEO roundtables that I'm involved in, and so on.
I know your first business that you built was around background checks and security and data, right? And then at some point that I don't know if that business took a back seat or it was just it had enough scale and enough infrastructure and enough of a team that you had more free time. But you started getting involved in this next chapter of life.
Yes, absolutely. That's if you don't count like what I was doing as a kid, like trying to do different things to make some money as a kid. Like the entrepreneurial spirit or seed was there from the beginning, because even as a kid, I was raising bunnies and selling them, and I would buy a bag of candy, break it up, and then sell it to other kids and stuff like that. And so I think there was that seed from early on of entrepreneurship. So I love entrepreneurship, and I think it's a good vehicle through which to kind of do a lot of good, for ourselves and for others. But ultimately, I did stints in different industries like hospitality, like banking, the consumer side, the corporate side, and but always in the back of my mind, I wanted to do my own thing. And so one of the last things I did on the corporate side was lead a team doing anti-money laundering investigations. So that was a little bit of a segue into getting into that kind of industry that has to do with due diligence and has to do with background checks and so on. So yeah, then that business took off, and then obviously once I was able to do a team, it was bootstrapped. So initially, like you kind of, which that journey very well, you have to do everything yourself, which I did, and then I started handing off little by little until pretty much like there was a complete team, and then that allowed me eventually. I mean, we're talking like many years into it now. I'm talking like 16, 17 years or something. So now I have that opportunity to kind of do other things in the meantime.
I think one of the hardest things about, I don't know, replacing yourself or putting a team in place or overcoming that hurdle is in the beginning, you really don't have enough resources to put a whole team in place, right? So you're doing a lot of things yourself. The real trick, I think, early on is figuring out what is the most important thing I need to be focusing on right now and allocate your time and your resources to that, as opposed to trying to do a million things, right?
Yes.
You kind of got to go, all right, what's the most important thing right now? And
Yeah.
as you grow, your resources grow, right? As you grow, you have more revenue, you have more profit, you have more
Yes.
resources that you can reinvest in the business. And then hiring a team is where I see a lot of companies go to die, if that makes sense, right? They hire the wrong
Yes.
people, they start over, they cost them a lot of money, they make mistakes, and the entrepreneur feels like they can never get out.
Yeah.
I'd love to know from your story, how did you go about this and how did you actually accomplish it?
Yeah, yeah, very. It's a very important stage in the business. An important point, Stavros, is like you said, yes, if, especially early, like when you're just like, okay, you can only afford to make one hire. If that one hire is not good, you know, you're in a lot of trouble, right? So I think one of the biggest milestones is when you find that first good hire, because then you can rely on them. They can take a lot of things off of your plate, and then that allows you to go to the next step. Because if you never make it past that point, some people may get sour and may become like, I'm going to do it all by myself, which we know is not going to work if you want to scale. Um, so it's important to get those first ones, first one and second one and whatnot, right. But also, I know how difficult it is. So if you do get it wrong, fix it as soon as possible, and then and then redo and restart, because it happens at every level. It happens with small companies, it happens with big companies, and of course, when you try and do it like in a planned way and not in a out of desperation, because a lot of times things that happen out of desperation, like decisions that happen out of desperation, hirings that happen out of desperation and rushed, a lot of times lead to mistakes. So some of these things require like good due diligence and a few different steps, and then double checking your gut as well. It's good, obviously, our gut feeling is a training that we've had through life, but also it's good to supplement that if you have someone else you trust to also give you an opinion, to look at this person or to speak to this person. It's also important to make use of whatever due diligence things, like obviously like reference checks, credentials checks, and all of these different things, just to confirm that credibility and to confirm that the person is who they say they are. So you have to make use of every tool that is available to you, and that improves the chances of obviously making a great decision. But also you have to really know exactly what you want, and that's also important to take the time to really determine what you need. There's so many aspects to it. We're just like kind of touching on different ones, because obviously in that hiring process, there is also like pitfalls. Like we may like someone because they're a good salesperson, and they can charm us into hiring them. But are they really good for the position that we need them to be good at? I mean, sometimes even they can be like us too much, and a lot of times that's not what you need. You need someone else who complements your skill sets and who can do things you may not be good at, maybe cover your blind spots and things like that. So again, we can go on and on about this whole hiring thing, but it's a big piece of the puzzle, a very important one.
I think there's two big mistakes that I see people make. One is they don't actually know how to onboard someone.
Mhm.
They don't actually have the experience of, hey, I need to bring somebody on, and so I need to support them.
Yeah.
And for me, the simplest trick that works is basically just let them shadow you. If you're bringing in someone to replace you in a portion of what you do,
Yeah.
literally bring them in and be like, just watch me. When I do this, all I want you to do for the first week is watch me. And then we have time to ask questions.
Mhm.
And the amount of time it takes when you're onboarding somebody, right? You got to add extra hours to your schedule to onboard
It's an
them and
investment,
do
but
that.
it's worth it.
Correct.
Hmm.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the second thing that I see people make the mistake on is once they know something's not right, they hold on to wishful thinking and they hold that person around a lot longer than they should. And really, whether they're not the right fit, they could be a wonderful person, you could like them, but they're just not delivering on the thing that you need them to deliver. They're just not. And the sooner you cut that cord and try to find the right person, the better. Because like you just said, it's a huge investment and it's worth it
Mhm.
if it works. So once you start realizing that your investment's not panning out, it's time to kind of cut your losses early rather than keep throwing good time and good money after the same.
Yes, yes. And I will definitely add to that is like one of the sayings is like people are not your greatest assets. the right people are your greatest assets. Because I mean, there is like obviously many people that we like, we can hang out with, whatever, but they may not be good for work. And I definitely like I second that, and I definitely want to stress that too. Because that beginning, the onboarding is like that's where the pace is set. That's where the expectations are set. That's where we take time to create that clarity and that understanding, and to also figure out how does that person learn, because people learn differently. And so it's important to note how do they learn, so to make sure that we give them what they need to have a running start, because a lot of time gets wasted there, and then a lot of times too, then resentment starts building there too. And also like if the expectations are not communicated early on, and then it may become acceptable that a lower standard is okay, and that's like and I've always told people like I mean, it's like this is a time for us to both make sure that we made the right decision. So it goes both ways. It's not just the employer, whatever, but also like the team member or the employee, has to make sure that they're in the right place, and there is no show stoppers, so to say.
How did you choose when you went out from the corporate world and into this business that you started on background checks, Sentinel data retrieval? Um, why this industry? Why this business? Was it just an opportunity that came your way, or was there a reason that you went into this?
Yeah, it's both. It's both. I mean, it's like I was always like reading like business magazines and like Entrepreneur Inc. and so on and so forth. And I always like kept an eye on those like industries that are rising or that are in demand, that are ongoing. So that's one. The other two is that like I started this business initially with a couple of other partners. That eventually, like I kind of bought the business, bought them out of the business, and we're still very good friends to this day. Um, but at the time, one of them had worked in it a little bit in the industry, and so he was like interested in starting something. So we talked about it, and initially I was just gonna invest and kind of do other things. In the meantime, I still had the corporate gig, but little by little I started getting more and more involved until I was pretty much front, center of it. So yeah, I took it over, and I just kind of started growing it and taking it to the next level. So it was both. It was like the opportunity came together, but it was also backed by research that indicated that is a good business to be in, a good industry that was going to be in demand, that is kind of a resilient demand.
Up until I started Routine Rebel, most of the businesses I pursued were because I saw the opportunity, because I saw the product market fit, because I saw Routine Rebel is really the first business that I've started that I was like, no, this is meaningful to me. Like this is that the reason to do the business has more to do with just the return on investment. Um, it sounds like you had made that business decision from a desire to be entrepreneurial. That was the real drive. As for me, like I enjoy entrepreneurship, and so it almost didn't matter where you pointed me. I enjoyed the entrepreneurial challenge. So it sounds like you had that similar experience. And now again, it sounds like you have a similar experience where you've chosen something that's far more meaningful to you on a personal level, and you're pursuing it perhaps differently or something like that.
Yes,
Does
yes,
that sound right?
definitely. I think I obviously if you can get that intersection of like, okay, something you're passionate about, and then something that makes business sense, it's a win-win, from all aspects. And then, of course, as you and I, have done and did different things, then you start chiseling away at it even as you get more experience, as you get wiser, you get better at even picking. Even a narrower kind of niche where you have the most impact, or where you can have the most impact, and again where those the skill sets intersect with the passion, and with the drive and the impact that you kind of want to have. So then it becomes like fuel, because it fuels you. Just I mean, just the mere fact of doing it itself just like gives you energy. You feed off of that.
Tell me about the word resilience. It feels like you've landed on resilience as the core theme. Why resilience?
Well, resilience is obviously like the ability to bounce back is very important, and that applies in business, that applies in life, that applies in health, applies in many different things. Because life is going to throw curveballs. So most of us have had, different challenges. Some of us had more challenges or harder challenges than others. Some of us were not born with the silver spoon and all the resources and things like that. And so there are things that happen in life, and one common theme across not just my story, probably your story and many other people's stories who just continue to drive forward and to push forward, is being able to use those setbacks as stepping stones instead of falling into the victim mentality and say, "Oh, this will never happen to me," or I'm just unlucky person, or like whatever I do, it's like goes wrong. Then you start looking at this lens of like, okay, only seeing the negative and not really because obviously like what we focus on, we notice more of, and when we focus on grows. And so it's just like taking a flashlight, where do you shine it? That's what you're going to see. So resilience is very important. That's something I obviously like I saw that made a difference in my life as I went through different setbacks. And it's also something I wanted to teach my children, something I want to teach my team, the people I guide, the people I coach, and anyone who's willing to listen.
I love that. Rashid, I want to talk about how resilience feels,
Yeah.
because sometimes resilience can feel like you're Sisyphus pushing that boulder up
Yes.
is it Sisyphus who's pushing that boulder up the mountain and it just keeps rolling down.
Yeah, I
Um,
know what you're talking
some
about, but I don't remember the name of the Greek you know character that's um,
So,
yeah.
so resilience can feel like that, right? It can feel like just an uphill grind and a struggle, but where you're still resilient, you're still showing up every day and you're still doing it. Resilience can also feel like a sense of peace, where even when you're knocked down, you're just like, "Hey, it's all right. This setback for I don't know what its purpose is, but it'll serve a purpose. I'm sure it'll add to something." Resilience can also feel like anywhere in between those two, right? So my journey started off with resilience feeling a lot like the first, and these days my resilience feels a lot more like the at peace version, where there's definitely setbacks, but those setbacks don't affect me emotionally and mentally. I mean, that's not a fair full statement. They don't affect me for mentally and emotionally for very long before my identity and my, kind of comes back and I'm like, all right, we'll get through this, right?
Yeah,
So
it
the
takes
the
you less
amount
to
of time
recover
yes,
because
the time to recover is less. Yeah.
right, because it's like you built that muscle. It's like it's training, it's practice, and then you get that perspective. Then you're able now to step back and maybe ask yourself, is this going to matter tomorrow? Is it going to matter next week? Or is it going to matter next month? A lot of times, like, we can get stuck inside that cyclone and not really be able to step away and say, okay, wait a minute, this is not as bad as it is. And to practice things to ground ourselves and to come back to our breathing and actually remember this is not the end of the world. And, and then to remind oneself, I've seen this before and I've seen worse than this. And you know what? It got better eventually. And sometimes it led to better things. It led to lessons, or it led to another opportunity, or you were redirected, because things just kept not working or whatever. It was a way to get, redirected. But also, there are times too when it's just like shiitake happens and it's just that. So you just got to get past it and move on, right? Sometimes there's just not much to analyze, not much to do. It's just sometimes this is how it is, just we move forward.
Ahead of the podcast, I had asked you, what do you think is a core lie that people believe that gets in their way, and what is the truth? And you made the distinction between revenue and profit, and so how revenue is vanity and profit is I think the expression is sanity, right?
Yeah,
I want to tie that to resilience here, because I think there's there's how much you're doing, which maybe people can see from the outside, and how much you're succeeding. And so that's the vanity side, right? There's the like, oh, Rashid has a really successful life, right?
yeah,
He's
yes, yes,
and then but then there's also profit, which is how much you're feeding your soul, and how much you're feeding your energy, and how much you're feeding yourself, so that when you do get those blows, you can kind of pick up and go. And I think that This truth that you're pointing is true in business, but it's also true in how we treat ourselves.
Yes, totally agree. As is the case in a lot of wisdom, it applies across different areas of of life, and that's very true for this particular principle as well. It definitely, like, especially now in the age of social media and everything, there is a lot of an advertised outside that people put, and then if someone doesn't know any better, they start comparing the people's advertised outside with their normal inside, which, like, even those people who advertise all of those things, they have the same struggles, they have like challenges, they have different things that they don't put out there up front, right? um, so everybody puts a manicured picture out there, but it's just a human nature. We're all guilty of that or whatever. I mean, sometimes we don't want to put that stuff out there, we just want to put the good stuff. Sometimes we don't even think much of it. um, but that is the reality. One just has to keep that in mind, and only compare themselves against their previous version of themselves. That's the healthiest way to kind of like getting better every day, because different people, different skill sets, different circumstances, different starting points, different resources, so different talents. So it's important that we keep that perspective and we remind ourselves of, like, what are my goals? What is the right mountain for me to climb? So I am climbing the right mountain. So I don't go follow somebody climb their mountain only to get halfway or up to the top and say, oh, this is not my mountain. This is not what I wanted. You see people change careers like after they've invested in becoming a doctor or a lawyer, and they're miserable, right? Just as an example, you see people like just get somewhere and like, oh, this is not my journey. I went on the wrong path.
How can you know what your journey is?
Yeah, well, I mean, very great question. It's like obviously and a big question as well, right? And it's one of those things that
Huge
we start
question.
out in life,
It's yeah.
right? We get a lot of downloads from society, from our parents, from um, many different sources, direct, indirect, conscious and unconscious. So that's why I'm a fan of taking the time to kind of reflect on life and actually think, okay, what am I good at? What do I enjoy? What are my values? How do I like to show up in life? How do I like to show up in my relationships? When am I at my best? Right? When am I really feeling like in flow, like that time disappears? I'm doing this, and and it just feeds me, nourishes my soul, and of course, like sometimes we have to try different things, and especially the younger you are, the more probably things you want to try, because that's part of the process. Because it helps you fine tune, where you want to go. We even talked about, like, okay, we did different things, but then we started going in a different kind of in a path started becoming clear about what we want to do going forward for the other next chapter of our life, or next stage in our life. But I think we have to be intentional about that, and then we have to take that time, and we have to try and filter out all this other noise, and then kind of go deeper inside about, like, within our being, within our souls, like what nourishes us, what drives us, and what makes us jump out of bed in the morning excited, wanting to do life.
When people ask me hard questions like that, I usually answer and just say, I think you just know. And just don't forget to look at, how are you sleeping?
Mm.
How happy are you?
Yeah.
How are, you know what I mean? Like, look at some of those basics that just kind of have to be with being alive. Because if you're sleeping well and you're happy, chances are whatever's going on around you is pretty good,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
if you're like, man, I can't sleep, well,
Yeah.
something's probably up. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Assuming you don't have some medical issue that obviously needs, you
Right.
know, absolutely. Totally agree. Yes. It's a good measure. Definitely.
And I think there's a lot of people who are on a journey and they keep telling themselves, man, I just got to get to the end of this journey and then I'll be happy. I just got
Yeah.
to get to the end
Yeah.
of this journey and then I'll be happy.
Yeah.
And that's not
Like
the
when
point.
I
Is
when I get here, it's like, and that's chasing your tail.
yeah. I think what the wisdom behind the comparison of revenue and profit, I I think can just be expanded in all the different areas of life, um, and really paying attention to what is it that you can keep at the end? What is it that you can reinvest in yourself or in your business or and paying attention to that? Because when that gets low, you actually don't have anything to reinvest.
Mhm.
I remember I joined a business a while back, and this was a business that somebody else had started, and it was doing really well. And they had a fabulous product market fit,
Yes.
which is what drew me to the business.
Mhm.
But the business on paper was not returning much of a profit.
Mhm.
And one of the very first things I did is I raised prices and I kept costs exactly where they were. And my primary motive there was to have excess capital to reinvest in the business,
Mhm.
not to take more profit home, right? Not to basically say, oh, we need to extract more, but to basically say, if we raise prices, we will have more of an operating profit and then we can reinvest that back into the business, which ultimately increased our impact tremendously because once we were able to reinvest that business into the business, we could grow. And once we could grow, we could have more customers and deliver more product and more services. And then those increase the impact that we had. And without that flywheel of profit, without having profit be an intentional part of our flywheel, we were just kind of stagnant. Customers loved us, employees loved it, everything was great. But the scale was limited by the fact that we weren't intentionally trying to extract more from those transactions to reinvest in our growth. We were our own best investment and we were passing on it.
Yeah, 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 and same way like that you've kind of taken that principle and that we talked about and then translate it to business. You can take that same principle too and translate it to personal reinvestment in your own development, in your own growth. Um, because like when you think you're done, you've arrived, that's when the decline starts. That's when arrogance starts. That's when ego takes over, and that's when you lose that student mentality, that apprentice mentality, and you think you're a master, and that's like again when the decline starts. So yeah, similar. I'll throw it back to you, and I say that same too for for the personal side. Investing in oneself is something that we need to continue doing.
Let me take us back. Will you give us a little bit about your journey? Where were you born? What was it like? How did you grow up? Give us a little bit of backstory.
Yeah, so I was born in Morocco. It was I grew up in a rural area of Morocco without all the luxuries and the modern plumbing and electricity. That stuff came on later. So humble, kind of humble beginning, simple life. Um, I mean, we didn't have a lot of luxuries or anything, but we enjoyed life still. We found ways to just play outside, and even though we didn't have a lot of these extra luxuries. We had enough food. We grow a lot of it ourselves in the fields and things like that. And so, anyways, I started making my way through school, and I started going further away from home because it's like because that's all changed now. But when I was growing up there, you could only go to a certain level. In primary school, then you have to go further if you continue with school. Some people, obviously, a good amount of people dropped out because
Did you just have to commute further each day, or did you actually have to go live somewhere
yeah,
else?
first, like you have to commute, meaning like you just have to walk longer, or sometimes like get on a taxi, or sometimes ride a bicycle, which was like I did do all of them, and then I built a bicycle like piece by piece back then. Part of that entrepreneurial thing, like when I was making that money, I was saving it and buying different parts until I was able to put bicycle together. That's the only way I could afford to make it happen. And funny story, when I first built it, I didn't have the brakes on it. So so it was interesting adventures just riding a bicycle without brakes for a good portion. And then eventually like I was able to like save some more money and kind of install the brakes on it. But I haven't I just remembered that now. I haven't like really thought about that in a long time.
What a
So anyways,
lovely story.
some crazy things happen, some crashes that I'm lucky to be still in one piece. But yeah, but then as I went further, then I went to a boarding school, then another boarding school further away. Then eventually, like as I got to the first couple of years of university, then I was about 6 hours drive from my hometown by then. So I would just stay there. I had like a couple of roommates. We got together. We rent like a room. We make our food and go study and do all of that good stuff. Then because I decided to choose English, to study as another language, I started to immerse myself more. I would go to the American Language Center, and which at the time, like in Marrakesh, there was one. There was none of that where I grew up, but obviously by then I was in Marrakesh, which was a slightly like obviously, bigger city with more amenities and more things. So in that process, like I would go there to get books and to sometimes you can watch movies in English. So it's just a way to get better at the language and whatnot. So through there, I heard there was an opportunity to interview to come and work for Disney. And so I went for it, and then you go through the process. You get tested in your language skills, written and then spoken. Then you interview for the job, and that's kind of how I got to the U.S. And then basically I came by myself. Borrowed enough money for the ticket and a couple of $100 like to start with, and that's kind of how my journey started in the U.S.
In what capacity did you work for Disney?
I was in they had like at Epcot, they had different pavilions. Like, so they had the Moroccan pavilion. So they call you a cultural representative. But technically, in my case, I was working in the restaurant. So I did all kinds of things in the restaurant, starting out the back, like doing dishwashing, doing all kinds of work. Then bussing, and sometimes you like working up front, like you watch a cart, like you sell stuff, like to the Disney guests, and then eventually becoming kind of a waiter. That's like the pinnacle of that journey, is like when you become a waiter, that you've arrived. Like
Were you 18? Were you 20? How
I
old are you
was
at this point?
20 when I came, and I turned 21 here, like within a few months of arriving in the US, in Orlando at the time.
And then so now you're at Disney, you're at Epcot. Where do you go from there?
So after that experience, I got out, worked in a couple of different, restaurants and hotels and things like that. Then I met my ex and the mother of my children that I was married to for like 20 years, and then because she lived in Tampa and I didn't have any other family over there, so it didn't matter to me. So I came to Tampa too. So that's kind of like, but my long-term goal was not to be in that industry or whatever. It's again those trying those different things, and it worked for time being. So I made my way through that into management, worked at different prominent places and whatnot. Uh, but ultimately, like the growth that I was seeking was capped there, and then I wanted more. I wanted more intellectually, and in all kinds of different ways, and also schedule wise, because it was difficult, to start a family if you're working
It's a
weekends and
lot of
you're
hours
working
for
late.
that industry.
Um, you know, so all of those things came together. So I went back to school. I put myself through business school while working two jobs in the hospitality, and then I got a business degree. Then switched careers. Then started in banking, like on the consumer side, um, and then did that for a while. Then did a stint recruiting nurses for a BSN program, and then eventually, went and worked for Citigroup as an analyst and a senior analyst, and leading a team of analysts. And so that's like the shorter, kind of version of it. Then eventually, like, obviously started Sentinel, um, and that's how it all went.
What a great entrepreneur, immigrant story, an entrepreneurial story. It, it reminds me. I was born in New York City, but both my parents were born and raised in Greece. They immigrated here, and one of the things that I'm connected with is hearing their stories, like yours, hearing the stories of my grandparents, and really connecting with those stories and understanding that that was a real reality for folks. And when I think about this next generation, especially a generation, maybe somebody who maybe is a few more generations than us removed from the immigrant story, it is so foreign to them, this idea of, you know, being in this very rural environment, having very little, having to commute for school, having to come to a whole new country where you know very little and take a relatively menial job and work your way, like that is a lifetime of experience that I feel the benefit that I didn't live it directly, but I got the benefit from my parents and from seeing their story. I worry that my kids aren't as closely connected to that story and what that means for them and what that means for their resilience and what that means for their work ethic and what that means for their hunger. I know your kids are very important to you. You talk about them a lot. Do you think about this? Do you think about like what your experience was like versus the experience that they had?
Yes, yes, absolutely. It's a great thing to think about because I mean, obviously, like we want to give our kids more than we had, but we don't want to overdo it to where they don't know the value of working hard, the value of grinding, what it takes, and building that resilience and that ability and that hunger and that ability to go for it and go after your goals. Because sometimes if everything's just handed to you, you may not maybe see the value, or you may not understand what it takes, to get to that level or to get those things. So it's a great ever-present thing for me. So I try to balance that, and I try to catch myself if I'm overdoing it. And of course, I want to teach my kids. I mean, through sharing that through stories, not guilting them or anything, or not playing victim or not anything, but just empowering and as an example of like how far you can go and what you can achieve with focus, with hard work, and with that resilience, and with character and with grit and with not giving up. But that being said, I know they have their own challenges too and their own setbacks. They're just different, different than ours. And they can build the same muscle. They can build the same character through different things. Whether it's like the trying to get better at a sport, to become more competitive, or with school, or with relationships, or trying to figure out what they want to do, or how they're going to do it. So I mean, it's like there are different ways that these things can be taught. It may not be exactly the same way, and it may not be the same journey, but there's a lot of principles. Because, for instance, watching my son um, switch from playing soccer from being 5 years old to his early to mid teens, to starting in hockey, where he wasn't skating before that, as opposed to like a lot of his teammates that were skating at 5 years old. So he had to overcome a lot of these things, for example, and so that takes persistence, and he did it, and he was able to get eventually into play it at high school, and to get into varsity, and eventually get into junior team now, right? And then I watch my daughter, because I mean she's autistic, and I remember her different challenges. Like, she has to work harder. She had to work harder for speech. She had to work harder for how to cultivate relationships, and some things that come easy for other people. She had to work, for. So those are all different ways to build muscles, to build that resilience, and to build character, and to build grit. But I share the stories. But again, from a place of empowerment, not a place of feel sorry for me, or victim, or any of that kind. So it's important to make that distinction, and then to just keep moving forward. Yeah.
Is there a story you find yourself telling often? Is there one in particular that comes that you feel like, hey, I've told my kids this story a dozen times?
I mean, there's different anecdotes and things like that. But obviously, like, I share this in the story that you've asked about, like how I got here. And sometimes it's just it just through things that pop up. It's like uh, an old image, maybe the prompt for that story, right? Or an old video, or it could be many different things, or it's just like a drive, and then we see something, and it's like, okay, well, this reminds me of this and this, where or I'll ask them, do you guys remember when we went on this road trip, for instance, in Morocco, or like when we were in Europe and you were that age? What do you remember of that, or whatnot?
Yeah.
And or, okay, your grandpa, this is his story. Your grandma, this is her story, and things like that. But typically, like with prompts, like something like that happens, and there's something that sparks that conversation, and then it just goes naturally like that.
I'm amazed at how much my children could listen. Like they ask their grandparents the same questions. They're like, "What was it like to do this?" And what was it like? And every, we especially my in-laws, we see them mostly during the holidays and during the summer. So
That's the ones who are
so
in
my kids,
Greece.
when they're together, they live in Cyprus, and then they come to New York, where we're originally from, for the holidays. So we tend to see them in the holidays, and then we tend to see them over the summer. And so my kids always ask a lot. They want to hear those same stories again. They're like, "Oh, tell us about the thing that was like this, and tell us about what school was like, and tell us." And it's so wonderful to see that they're curious. And also, I think hearing those stories brings a certain appreciation, which I think is what we don't want for our next generation, is for them to take things for granted. As long as they appreciate it, right, and they understand the value of it, and they want to build on it, I think we're very happy to see them kind of grow as much as possible. It's when that next generation starts to take things for granted that you're like, I missed the mark. I wasn't able to teach you this lesson successfully, or something like that.
Yeah. Well, the most important thing is presence, of course. Being there is most of the battle. I mean, it's like we may not be prepared 100% all the time or perfect, or because some things we haven't done before. We're doing them for the first time, right? So I think it's that presence is a great start. But you reminded me also of like when I was a kid. I used to be fascinated too by listening to, like by the time like I was conscious, my grandparents from my dad's side were already like they had already passed, but from my mom's side they were still around. So I had the opportunity and the privilege to be able to like spend time with them and then listen to some of those old stories and I remember I used to be like fascinated and star-eyed with those like tales and a lot of the things that they used to do. And again, the more generations you go back, the more they had to do and the less resources they had that we're used to today. So you just reminded me of that. I used to be fascinated with that too. So I'm happy to hear your kids too have that sense of curiosity. And I get like all like excited too when my kids start asking questions, whether it's of me or if other people or anything like that. And I love that. I love to see that. I love to hear that when, I see their sense of curiosity, because that is a great quality to have, is that sense of curiosity and that thirst for knowing, thirst for learning, and thirst for knowledge. It's a great quality to have and cultivate. Yeah.
The perspective you get from that, right? When you hear those stories, or when the kids hear those stories, they get to see the world becomes wider. One of the things that's been true for me is I was just lucky enough to have exposure to things that my friend groups weren't necessarily able to have exposure. And that exposure, it broadened my world. It made my world much larger. And what I thought was possible was larger. And how things were done became larger. And all of that perspective ultimately just helps with drive and with resilience and with all of that stuff.
Yeah, because I mean, we get exposed to things and we see what's possible. Sometimes that's obviously like our imagination is one way, because obviously you first have to imagine things too. But sometimes, obviously, like, you see that what's been done and it's like, oh, I like that. I should do something like that or something better than that or whatnot. And that's why that curiosity and that exposure to experiences too, which I know you're big on that as well. You do that with your kids. You try to go places and you try to have experiences, which kudos on that. I mean, it's like it's a great thing to do, because those experiences show you what's possible, and then they broaden the horizon, they broaden the experience, they show the kids what's possible, and it's like it's a good way to connect as well.
I think there's a lot of learning that can happen in an analogous experience. So let me share a little bit about that. So there was a moment where, before I had really started Routine Rebel, but I had left the day to day of my previous company, and I decided that I would go drive 2 hours south from here and drive cars really, really fast.
Uh-huh.
So we were on a track, and they were teaching us in these stripped down Crown Vics how to like drive. I don't know if you're just going straight and then you're turning left and you're going straight. So you're just going in a big oval.
Yeah,
You
yes.
know what I mean? The whole time. The question is how, yeah, like Alu, how close, how short can you get your time? And they're giving us instruction. They're talking to us on the microphone. And the instruction was this: it's like, you drive as fast as you possibly can. And when the turn shows up, you take your foot off the gas and you just dive into the turn as hard as you can. And you don't really need to press the brake, but do not press the gas until you see the other straightaway. Because if you push the gas too soon, you're going to go smack right into the wall.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? In the middle of your turn. So that was the instruction. As fast as you can, take your foot off the brake, turn as hard as you can into the turn, wait till you see the straightaway, and then accelerate again. And I'm sitting there and I'm driving at, God knows what speed in this like part of my life that I knew what was over. I didn't quite know what was next. And I was just kind of sitting there. And what I realized was I was in the left turn of life. I had stopped the last thing I had doing. I had taken my foot off the gas from the last company. I had dove. I had turned all the way into my turn, and I was in my turn. And I wanted to press the gas because my whole life I've been pressing the gas. But if I had pressed the gas at that point in my life and what came next, I would have smacked into the wall. So
Right.
what I needed to do is I needed to just stay in the turn until I saw the next straightaway. And I think there's so much learning we can do from experiences that has nothing to do with the experience. Yes, I learned to drive a car a little faster that day, but the insight that I was left with about where I was in my life and what I was doing was so much more powerful.
Yeah, and sometimes like making those analogies, which that's great analogy, helps you crystallize it. It's like take it a little bit more from the abstract into the concrete.
Mhm.
Because it's like the analogy like is a good lens through which to see and to put like words to that to that experience or that intersection that you are in or whatnot. Yes, yeah, if you press the gas while you're not stable or you don't know exactly which direction you're going, it's gonna you're possibly gonna crash. But if you wait until you get that clear runaway, then you press the gas and then that's a whole different story, right?
I boiled it down to a handful of principles. One, I was learning something new, and therefore I was in the learner mindset and not the knower mindset.
Yes.
So the part that I had put in focus was the curious part, the learner part, that's the part that was of me that showed up. It wasn't the part of me that thought I knew everything that was going on.
Mhm.
Two, I got a lot of practice in a very relatively short amount of time. The amount of times I would have to go through that left turn in life were not going to be very many. They would be very many years apart, in
Mhm.
fact. But the amount of times I got to turn left on that track
Yeah.
were in the hundreds over the course of just a few minutes.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So,
Uh-huh.
so I got a lot of practice very
Yes.
quickly. I was able to iterate a
Yeah.
lot. The third thing, as much as it's funny to say this, is the risk was lower. Yes, I was in a car, I was going very fast, but I was in safety gear and I was in a place where they had thought about this. And so the cost of a mistake would not have been the same as the cost of a mistake of Excel in my real life, making the wrong decision in my real life and starting down a wrong chapter or a wrong something like that.
Right, right. It's
And
like a
finally,
simulator. Like you're in a simulator or in a controlled environment. It's the best way to learn,
yeah.
and without dying.
And finally, I think what happened is because that experience was so true to me,
Mm.
I learned it not in an academic sense by reading a book about transitions in life and not in an academics, but I learned it in a way that connected with my body. I learned it in a way that connected with my subconscious.
Mm-hmm.
And so it became very, very real and it became instinct,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
now I have instincts
Yeah.
about the left turn in life and when to
Mm-hmm.
accelerate and when to
Mm-hmm.
decelerate, which have it would have taken a lot longer to get those instincts from life experience.
Yes. Yeah. Totally agree. Yeah. It's a good way to make it stick. To get
Yeah.
the lesson to really stick. Yeah.
It's something that I hope Routine Rebel returns to one day. There's nothing that we're really doing in that area. We are doing adventures and we are doing things where people can get involved and go do adventures with us and have experiences.
Mm-hmm.
But that very explicit, like you're here to learn about something else,
Yeah.
but we're going to use this other analogy as the platform for it.
Mm-hmm.
That is something that I will be returning to in the future because I think it's very powerful.
Yeah. No, it's an awesome strategy for sure.
Tell us a little bit about your company and what you're doing. Are you doing your work through coaching? How are you doing your work?
Okay, well, I mean, it's like Sentinel data retrieval. We serve background check companies. We
Yeah.
basically help them take care of their clients by providing them with, accurate, timely, and cost-effective, like court data and court information, which the criminal histories are the biggest portion of a background check. There are other aspects. There is obviously driving histories, credentials when they're relevant, references, and so on. And when relevant, also drug screening, like for instance, for people operating machinery and so on and so forth. So that's that one. And then resilience, resilience across borders. The podcast all centers around resilience. Everything in that has to do with resilience. Again, like I chose across borders because it applies in so many ways because of my
Yeah.
journey, like coming across different more than one country and having experiences there, but also like through different stages in life, whether it's through business, the growth stages of business, the career, uh, the family, all of it. Like so, you'll hear me talk about different aspects of where resilience applies all across, and again trying to bring it all together. The journal, which I have a copy of here, this Imogim. This is the travel, the smaller one, because I have a regular size in it. With that, it's like I'm helping people like do some of those things we talked about. Like some of the first questions there is like to help someone actually work through to figure out what are their core values, what matters to them, what drives them, and to use that as springboard for like how the goals should be set up and how they should be aligned. And then there are things about like balancing the wheel of life to make sure all the aspects that are important for you, whether they're financial, spiritual, career, family, whatever they are, uh, that you are clear about them, and that you partition and distribute your time properly so that wheel of life rolls smoothly. Because if like one
Yeah.
aspect is neglected, such as your health, then the wheel may not roll smoothly, right? So and you may not be good at business, you may not be. So just an example, without diving too deep into that, is that like it's all like all things like that. It's a controlled process and a guided like kind of workbook, and to like work through these things. And then there are reps that you have to do as often as you can, whether it's daily, whether it's weekly, to where review, okay, what have I done this week? After you choose what you want to focus on and what it means to you, and what are the next steps, then there are reps in there. Which steps did I do to get closer to that goal? Have I practiced my gratitude, which allows me to be grounded, to be present, and to be thankful for where I'm at now while I'm working towards my next goal. So again, so you're
Yeah.
not like victim to those hungry ghosts where I always like, oh no, not enough, I don't have it yet, or when I get here, or when I get there. So finding that balance to where it's like, okay, I am happy where I'm at now. I'm glad where I'm at now. I'm pushing forward to the next level, but I'm also taking time to be grateful for now and to be present in now. And then, so that's kind of what the journal does. And the courses will dive deeper into different things. Like for instance, different people, different needs. Sometimes someone is just lost at that first step, and they just need to figure that out. Someone has done that step, but maybe they've had a setback, and they need to figure out how to bounce back and how to find themselves again. And whether it's an end of a relationship, end of a career, switching of a career, stage of life, whatever. So those get then to go a little bit deeper into different,
Yeah.
different topics, with the whole umbrella of just like helping people just not sleepwalk through life. Take actually
Yeah.
time, be intentional about your life. Where have you been? Where are you now? Where would you like to go? And how can you make the most out of life? Quality of life, and relationships, and healthy hobbies, and so on.
Helping people understand that it is so important to be proactive about life as opposed to reactive about life.
Mhm.
I think is the core, is like the building, like you got to start there,
Yes.
right? And so your life is in your hands, and you can make of it what you will
Yes.
and what you want.
Hmm.
Then there's the trap of, well, I want it to be so much different than my life is today. And it's like, okay, it's like you can want that. That's okay. But if you get stuck in wanting and you get stuck in feeling lack,
Yes.
that is not going to be good for your energy. It's not going to be good for your approach for how you get there.
Yes.
What was a really important lesson for me was to simply be able to say to myself, I love myself and my
Yes.
circumstances. while I'm working to improve myself and
Yes.
my circumstances, right?
Yes.
Like, but I got to love that certain right now,
Yes.
even though there might be a future version that
Yes.
I'm working towards.
Yes.
That maybe that gratitude that comes with that
Yeah.
is probably for me the core of my resilience.
Yeah.
The other thing I love about what you're saying is I spent a lot of time with a wellness wheel. It is a
Mm.
practice that I had in my life where I said, these are the areas of my life which are important to me.
Yes.
And then every so often I would reflect and I would say, how am I doing in this area? What
Mm.
would I like to be different? How can I go about creating that change?
Yeah.
How do I need to think of my own self identity
Yeah.
differently in order to get there? And that proactive effort towards each of those areas, not big changes, little
Yes.
tiny
Yes. Yes.
changes that
Hmm.
compound
Yeah.
over time
Yes.
were really the system for my transformation,
Mm.
if that makes
Mm.
sense. So I love that you're focusing on wellness wheels.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you have the podcast,
Mm.
the journal, and then courses
Yes.
that people can
Yeah.
engage in.
And coaching.
Is the podcast, say again?
And coaching.
And coaching and
Yes.
coaching.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because sometimes, like, depending on the needs and depending on where the person is and how committed they are to doing that, sometimes you need a guide or a Sherpa, who has been there to kind of guide you, to kind of bridge that gap, as a kind of a better way to, like, kind of work through these things.
Tell us about the podcast. How long are episodes? How often do they go out? What can people expect if they want to tune in?
Yeah, so they're bite sized. They're typically, like, on average anything from 7 minutes to like 12 for now. And like you, like, eventually, like, I will go back because I used to do another podcast that has to do with the background checks, and it was guest format. I would have guests over, and we'd have conversations like you and I having. So eventually, like, I will also convert the podcast to to that same format, and we can switch chairs. I would love to have you on it. But yes, so the podcast is like that now, but it's like bite size, and it's like it's really to the point, and it's like we take a topic for any particular given time, and then I just give a few strategies about, like, how to approach it, like some steps that you can take. I give some examples and strategies because obviously, I'm all about transformation, not just learning for entertainment. So I try to give people, like, specific examples and different ways they can deal with different situations. Whether it has to do with, like, okay, starting over after the end of a relationship, or a career, or like the importance of sleep that we were talking about, and the importance of learning and how to approach it and how to be intentional with it, not just like scatterbrain and then just, like, again, because there's a danger, especially now with so much information available. It's easy to be drowning in all that information, but without making any sense of it. And I think it was Tony Robbins who said, like, wealth of information creates poverty of attention. So I think, you can drown yourself in a lot of information, but if you're not intentional about what you're trying to do and which actions are you going to take, then you're just entertaining yourself, right? So I try to make it about, like, have actions, recommendations for things like that. And then I hope to continue with that same thing when I start again doing interview format, to bring guests that have value, like yourself, that are focused in areas like that are talking about approaching life with intention, building resilience, building that muscle, that allows us to have a better life for ourselves and for others.
And you told us a little bit about the journal. Is it something that's intended to go through once and to get you started on your journey? Is it something that's intended to be a practice that you return to often to keep you on your journey? Is it a little bit of both?
Yeah, it's definitely, like, obviously, like, the ideal. My recommendation is that it's done regularly, because I'm a strong believer in those reps. You have to put in the reps. And that applies to the gym. That applies to, like, learning a guitar or learning a language or whatever you want to learn or get better at. You have to practice and you have to do your reps. And so it's designed for that. So of course there's some heavier stuff doesn't need to be done every day. The heavier stuff can be done once a quarter, once a year. Like the first portion of that is the heavy stuff. where you dig deeper into the core values. What are your core values? What are your guiding principles? What are your guardrails that will keep you, on that path, and so on. And then the rest is reps. Then the reps are like things like practicing your gratitude, because there's something wonderful that happens when you start with gratitude. And you're just your attention again is directed towards the positive. And then you're talking about making goals out of inspiration, not goals out of lack or out of desperation. So
Hmm.
so again, when you're intentional and you do these reps and you do something like gratitude, and you take the time to find what you're grateful for, and then you take the time to say, okay, before you open the emails and you do all of those things and you get sucked into other people's priorities or other entertainment or whatever, you outline a couple of priorities for yourself, or most valuable things, MVPs that you want to do. Uh, or most valuable projects and for that day, so that you make sure you do them, because otherwise your chain's going to be yanked in different directions if you don't take control. So it's like, that's why it's important to do the reps, because then it keeps you focused.
The importance of gratitude for me in my life was tremendous, and so I every so often I'll reinvent my gratitude practice just
Yes,
to keep it fresh and
yes,
to. So my current gratitude practice is in the morning, my very first cup of coffee that I make.
yes,
I sit, normally in my screen room outside,
yeah,
and with every sip of coffee that I have,
yes,
as I savor it, as I savor it, I
yeah.
think of something that I'm grateful
I
for.
love it. I
And
love it.
because I get so many different sips of coffee, I may get 50, 60 sips.
Yes,
It's okay for me to repeat things. I can be like, you know what? I'm really grateful for my family. And
yeah,
I can say that every day, and
yes,
it doesn't become just this thing you say, right? It
yes,
becomes a
yes.
thing
I love it.
I can actually feel.
I love it.
And then I have room for like, okay, in this particular day, what am I grateful for, right? So I start with the standard things, and then I kind of go into like,
Yeah.
what are the circumstances right now?
Mhm.
And it has been just wonderful to reinvent my own gratitude practice and do it anew, to
Yes,
do it fresh again.
yes.
It's made it. It's reintroduced it in a powerful way to my life.
Yes, I love it. I love it. I love that. And I'm gonna borrow that one, because I mean I do the
Please.
journal, and I've done different journals to shake besides
Yeah.
mine. I shake it up a little bit so it doesn't become monotonous. So I'm not doing it on robot mode, right?
Right.
So
Right.
I love that, and I'm always looking for different ideas, like to
Yeah.
kind of put some fresh, air into it, some different ways to approach it. Yes, get creative with it, have fun with it. I love that. Um, but I do
I
love I
love.
do love to write out things. There is like something about
Yes.
that. When you write something,
Mhm.
it's been proven scientifically too, for learning, but also for making something really, really memorable and stick. And there's also quite therapeutic, because also like in part of the journal, I leave a certain area for just a brain dump, like to get things off of
Yeah.
your mind. Sometimes, so they're not kicking around. There's something about that therapeutic and also
Yes.
very
Yes.
practical, especially when you have a lot of, on your mind. When you pen it and you pin it down on paper, there is something calming about that. You get it out of your head, you put it on paper. It's either like to get rid of it, or if you're worried you may forget it because it's something you want to do, it's too many things or whatever. A good brain dump is a good practice. So in the journal there is a portion for that. But I say to people, even if you don't have a fancy journal or whatever, just take any notebook, good old notebook, and
Yes.
just do a brain dump every now and then. Don't worry about punctuation. Don't worry about grammar. Don't whatever. Just furiously write what's just in your brain. What's flooding your mind. What's in your in your brain. Then later, if you need to, you can make sense of it. Sometimes you just dump it and you tear it up, you throw it away. That in itself is quite useful and quite therapeutic.
I was having a conversation with Dr. Carlos Garcia. He was a former guest here on the podcast. He's involved with Routine Rebel, and I was telling him about my five practices, the five practices that I keep in order to continue me on this journey and to hold me steady. And the very first practice I have is talk to yourself. And so what I mean by this, for me, many times, this is journaling. And I will just sit and I'll write stream of consciousness style. I really won't pay any attention to anything. And the fundamental thing it does is it gives me clarity. Because when I journal, like you're saying, you can take all the confusing thoughts out of my head, I can put them on paper, and then they start to make sense. And I'm like, oh, okay, I understand what's wrong. And I was sharing this with Carlos, and he said, a lot of people don't know how to have a good dialogue with themselves. They tend to be too self-critical. They tend to judge themselves too much. They tend to hesitate. They tend to I think a large part of journaling, a really good practice is to go back and read your journal entries and observe how you're talking to yourself and say, would I talk to my friend like that? Would I talk to my partner like that? Or why am I talking to
Or
my
someone you love or someone you care about. Yeah. Hmm.
exactly, exactly, because we have to bring so much of that the the safety we feel when we're grateful, we then need to bring it back to ourselves and in our own self-development and use that gratitude and that safety to kind of build the next version of ourselves that we're trying to build. It's a delicate balance of being hard, like you got to be able to pat yourself on your back and give yourself a swift kick in the butt at the same time.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I think it's coming from a good place, but that's a great one. Definitely, how we talk to ourselves is important. That's one of the things too. I try to instill in my kids. If I catch them like falling into some of these traps that a lot of people do, oh, I'm just not this or I'm just not that, like identity stuff. It's like, okay, well, maybe I'm not good at this yet. There is a difference, right? So you're not lying to yourself, but at the same time, you are not like attacking your own identity and your own potential. Because I mean, if you can't believe in yourself, how can you expect anybody else to believe in yourself, right? And also, like how we talk to ourselves definitely makes a huge difference. Because if you're talking down to yourself, you're not gonna go far, right? So we need to stoke ourselves and stoke ourselves up and get ourselves fired up. But also we need to respect and love ourselves, because that's what's going to be mirrored to us too, by the outside world, by the universe, right? If you respect yourself, you love yourself, you're proud of yourself, and you're able to say to yourself, yeah. I am working on this. I'm maybe not here yet or whatever, but I did this. This is great. I should celebrate this. I'm proud of myself, for getting this far, or for doing this, or for overcoming this challenge. And sometimes too, talking to past and future self, thanking the past self that, like for instance, in my case, the younger self, I thank the younger self that said, you know what, I'm not going to settle for where I was born. I want more opportunity. I'm going to, be adventurous, and I'm going to go and I'm going to go for it. So I have to thank that younger self for getting that started, right? And
That's
then,
wonderful.
right? And then sometimes I ask my future self, like, what would my future wiser self do in this situation, right? And also, what can I do for my future self that my future self is going to thank me for? Because sometimes too we get stuck into that thing. It's like it's hard to do good things that are going to lead to long-term um, benefit, because a lot of times, like our mind just wants survival and wants to do the easy and comfortable thing for now, which is easy for the present self, but future self might suffer for it, because maybe we chose the easy thing. We didn't do the hard decision of maybe eating better, maybe pushing harder with a workout, or sacrificing some short-term pleasure for a long-term benefit. So I totally agree. I'm 100% with you there, with like how we talk to ourselves and how we have fun with that as well. Again, so
I
we
love
shake
the
it up.
idea.
Yeah.
I love the idea of not just talking with yourself in the present, but talking with yourself from the past and talking with yourself from the future. I think that adds a whole other dynamic to talking to yourself.
Yes,
That
yes.
I'm
Without
I'm
beating
gonna I'm
yourself
gonna borrow
ever,
that one.
not beating yourself up or whatever, because sometimes too, the danger is like looking at the past. I always say, you can look to the past for lessons and for celebrations. Um, Anything else is garbage, needs to be dumped. There's no use in it or whatever. Extract the wisdom, extract the language, the lessons, if there is any. And then if there's something to celebrate, by all means, celebrate as many times as you want. That one, no problem. But like not dwelling on past mistakes. because that can be detrimental.
It strikes me that to return a little bit to the core truth you were talking about before, whether we're talking about in business or in life, the ability to value the profit and not the revenue, and the ability to reinvest that profit in yourself or in your business or whatever it is you're trying to grow in a proactive way, it feels like it just pays dividends. And I think listening to you talk, what I see is that you've done enough of that for yourself that you now have enough wisdom and time and space and energy and compassion that you now want to bring that to other people, right? You want to share that, with others and say, hey, I have the benefit of my experience. Here's the lessons I've learned. Here's the little tips and tricks and all the little things that I figured out along the way that helped me live this very like happy life. And I've got enough of it now that I want to share it with you,
Yeah,
right?
that's where things come full circle, right? It's like, you learn it, you do it, then you teach it. And that applies to training, that applies to different, whether it's a work training, any different type of thing, and training in life. And, you go in that journey and to come full circle, you pass on what you've learned and you help other people, kind of navigate those straits.
Rachid, I'm inspired by you as always. Thank you for being a guest on
Thank you
today's
very
show.
much, Stavros. Likewise, brother. I'm
Is
proud
there
of you and I appreciate what you're doing. And I look forward to future collaborations for sure.
Thank you. Thank you. I look forward to them too. Is there anywhere, so it's atresilience.com, but is there anywhere else where people should look for you? Instagram,
I mean, it's
Facebook,
like
LinkedIn,
obviously
where
like
are you?
if someone just has Instagram, they can go to Rashid Podcaster at Instagram. That's my name handle there. I mean, if you Google Rashid Zahidi, I'm fortunate enough to have, depending on who you ask, like somewhat a unique name. There is others with the same name, but not as many in the U.S. So most likely, if you put that in, you'll find me. The book will come up, other things will come up. But at resilience.com is like one place you can go and you can find links to all of these. So I try to make it easy for people and simple. But there is all those things are available: Facebook, LinkedIn.
Yeah, I have to attest, being Stavros Michaelidis, there's not very many of us. So
Yeah,
I have Google, my SEO is pretty good, right?
yeah.
So
No, it is good, but it's like obviously. But if you don't want to be found, it's a setback. Luckily, we're doing good stuff and good work. We have nothing to hide, and it's fine.
Rashid, thank you again, man. I appreciate you being here. Thank you, everybody, for listening to the Wednesdays Off podcast. See you next Wednesday.